The video log for front sight day 2. So day 2 started off right on the range. We didn't go to the classroom. There weren't any lectures to begin. No check-in procedure. You just come right to the range at the time that you're designated. You can come early, and they do have some dry practice that's set up. So if you want to get a little bit of extra dry practice in, if you weren't able to do it at your hotel or wherever you were staying, you can come to the range and do that prior to class starting. We started with some malfunction drills this morning. We had type 1, 2, and 3 malfunctions that we were setting up and we were clearing. Type 1 basically being a failure to fire. That could be because of a lack of a round in the chamber or a dud round, or for whatever reason it just didn't go off. So identifying that, clearing it, simply it's a tap and a rack, clearing that round that was in the chamber, or making sure that a round is chambered, bringing it back up, getting back on target, and then making the decision whether or not you needed to fire. Type 2, where you've got essentially a stovepipe, you've got ejected brass caught halfway in the chamber. So we were setting that up, putting a round in, closing it, and then we would go ahead and basically the clearing is the same. So you go in, and when you pull the trigger, you don't really get any feedback. It's a dead trigger. So you're going to quickly look at it, and then you're going to you're going to tap, and then you're going to rack, clear that brass out, chamber a fresh new round, come back up, get on the target as necessary. And then the type 3, of course, which is really essentially a double feed, and we are setting these up, dropping a live round in the chamber, putting a fresh magazine in, and then closing the slide so that it actually fed that second round in. Same thing, you get up, you get on the target, you squeeze the trigger, you get a dead trigger, there's no action. You go ahead and flip the gun up, you take a quick look, you see that you got that double feed, lock the slide open, go ahead, pull that magazine out and dump it, rack, get that slide open. They're really adamant about doing a 3 rack, even if you see the brass fly or you know that the chamber's empty. They really want you to do all 3 in practice. They just want to establish that habit. And then going back to your belt, bringing in that second magazine, loading, racking, and coming back up on the target if necessary. They also taught a technique where you would be able to retain that magazine if you needed to. Perhaps you didn't have a spare magazine, or you had already gone through your spare magazines. You may retain that spare magazine rather than dump it into the ground, do your rack, and then reload if necessary. Just depends at that point on really what your gear situation was, and they encouraged us to both, practice both techniques. It's good to know both and kind of figure out how it works if you are going to hold it. Can you put it in your firing hand while you're racking that slide? Do you need to tuck it in a belt or stick it in a pocket, or what technique is going to work for you? So that was most of the morning. We also did a little bit this morning on reloads. So we had been doing sort of tactical reloads the whole time. Essentially, you fire a few shots. After the string of fire, you're doing your after-action drills, which is essentially looking, clearing, scanning, deciding whether or not it was safe to go back in the holster. If it was, go ahead and get that fresh magazine, retain the magazine in the gun, put the fresh one in there so you always have a topped-up gun. We have been doing that all along. Now they wanted to get into the emergency reload, which is basically where your gun runs dry. You fired your last round, you don't have anything else in the magazine, slides locked back on an empty chamber. Again, just like the type 2 or 3 malfunction, you get a dead trigger, you flip it up, you look, you see that it's empty. You're going to go ahead and make sure you've got a spare mag. You're going to grab that mag and dump that magazine that's in the gun, hitting the release, feed it, rack it, get it back up and running if you need to. So that was the drills this morning. During lunch, we had a lecture again. This lecture was on the civil and criminal possibilities that happen after a shoot. So whether or not it was a justified shoot, you still may be dealing with the cops. They talked about what to say if you're going to say anything, kind of focusing on the fact that you don't want to give out details or too much information. So that was very good. They also said, not saying anything at all can be bad in some cases because the cops don't know what the situation is. It's not always going to be as clear as, the masked burglar in your bedroom where it was a pretty obvious justifiable shoot. It could be something where you're out in public and you're just another person, and who knows who all the players are. So you may need to give the police enough information that they can exonerate you and have you leave. If you're comfortable with doing that and you want to talk without your lawyer, you want to make sure that you don't give excess information, just the information that's critical and vital at that particular moment. They also talked about some of the civil penalties where you can win all your criminal cases, but you can still be sued. They mentioned some numbers. She was saying like $50,000 per bullet. Where's that come from? That's a made-up number. not really even worth mentioning, I think. But the point is, every round you fire potentially has that chance that there's liability attached to it. Whether it injures somebody, injures property, certainly gets you into trouble, so you want to be very careful, and you have to understand that there are some consequences if you get into a defensive gun use. We also had another lecture in the after the classes. We pretty much end every day with a lecture as well, and that lecture was on tactics, which is great because we're going to be doing tactics tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to be a very fun day, I think, and so the lecture was about single band tactics, going in and say, for example, you had to move through your house. Emphasizing the fact that you don't really want to move through your house if you don't have to. The only reason you would do that would be to go to an aid of a family member. Maybe the kids' bedrooms are down the hall. We suspect somebody's in your house. You may have to move through that house, and you want to do it tactically. You don't want to just walk and blunder into a situation where there's somebody with a weapon waiting for you. You want to move in a way that gives you the advantage. You maintain that element of surprise. You'll be able to make sure that you see what you're getting into as you enter these transitional spaces. They talked about how to open doors, move through doorways, bringing that gun back into a close contact position as you're moving through a door, not walking out and leading with the gun. So they had some pretty good information in there. That's all to set us up for tomorrow, where we're going to be on a different range, and they're actually going to have some doors set up, and we're going to be doing this and moving through, clearing these rooms and things on our own. And then we're also, this afternoon, we also had done some additional drills. So in addition to doing those 2 shots to the chest, which they like to call the thoracic cavity, they're very big on inventing terminology here. So the thoracic cavity and the cranioocular cavity. So instead of a high center chest or center mass or a chest shot, they're very specific about that thoracic cavity. They're not talking about a head shot, they're talking about that cranioocular cavity. And so they're very particular about the language that they use. But we went in, we did some additional drills. So we did a failure to stop drill. You put 2 in the chest, the guy keeps coming, you might need to switch targets, come on up, put that one in the head. And so they had that as a designated course where we fired a couple of rounds and we knew it was coming, and is what we did. But then the nice thing is they also threw some of those in a little bit later. So in some other drills, we might be putting 2 in the chest, and as we clear and we're getting ready to go ahead and do our assessments and we're getting ready to reholster, they'll call out head, and so we'll have to come up and bring that additional shot in. Something to sort of make you constantly think, process, understand what's going on in your environment. It wasn't just static. So I really liked that they were throwing that in. It was a great way to just say, you know what, the situation can change, and you can't count on whatever's happening right now to be what happens in the next few seconds, in the next few minutes. You've got to constantly be paying attention and being aware. If you did have to draw your gun and you did have to shoot, you better be paying attention, and so it was a great way to kind of reinforce that. They also added some time pressure today. They brought out a timer. They set it up. They said ignore the second beep. So we fired on the beep, and then about a second and a half later there was a second beep. And again, they said ignore the second beep, but I'm pretty sure that's the time frame that they want us to get those 2 shots in. And I was actually able to do that on pretty much all the yard lines. We were firing at 3, 5, 7, and 10 yards, and pretty much I could get both rounds in under that second and a half as far back as the 7, and it was kind of close at the 10. I was a little over on that, keeping those shots nice and tight. If I'd have sped it up, I probably would have done it, but my group would have expanded a lot more than I was really looking for. So something to kind of keep an eye on, and I suspect that'll probably come into play quite a bit more tomorrow as we continue to ramp up the training. So that was about it for today. Not as long as videos yesterday. Hopefully it's going to be a better quality video. I certainly am not as tired as I was, so maybe I'm a little bit more coherent. Again, I'm going to continue these journals on day 3 and day 4. Day 4 will probably be late because I'm going to be traveling home directly after the course, and so the video won't get up for a day or 2. I hope you guys are enjoying it. If not, well, I'm doing it for my own self. Thanks. Bye.